Laura Acuna, thank you so much for being on the Compared to Who show today.
Thank you for inviting me.
Well, it's so fun to get to talk to you. I know we've got some mutual friends. We're in this same space of helping women break free from, in some cases, in your case, in my case too, decades of dieting and body image bondage. And I'd love to start today with you just telling us your story because it's a powerful one. And I'd love for the listeners to hear it. Would you mind sharing your story with us today, Laura?
I'd love to. I really would. I have to tell you, there was a time in my life when I would not want to,
I'm
but
right there with
because,
you.
right? But
Yes.
because of God's redeeming grace and glory and love and healing, it's now actually an honor and privilege to share my story with other women because I've learned that for decades, I believed I was the only one. And I now know I'm not. And it's really important to me for other women to know they're not either.
Amen. Yep.
So my story started when I was 11. Up until that time, everything was hunky-dory as far as I remember. I was a little girl. I loved doing all kinds of things. I believed that God had a plan and purpose for my life. Even then, I didn't know what it was, but I was excited about serving him one day, like I watched my mom and my grandmothers do. And I loved church and life was good. And then I entered the seventh grade. Difficult years, middle school. And I weighed 100 pounds when I entered the seventh grade. I was 5 feet tall. And when I left the ninth grade, I weighed well over 200 pounds and I was only 5'3". So in the span of about a year and a half, actually, I gained well over 100 pounds out of the blue.
Wow.
And I described it then as a bomb going off and everything changed.
Yeah.
Everything changed. The way people looked at me, the way people treated me, that I felt the trajectory for my life was altered. I believed that, wrongly, that God did have a plan and purpose for my life and it was going to be awesome. But after that, I felt like he'd taken it away.
Yeah.
He said, I can't work with you. I can't do this anymore. This is not going to work for me. Now I know that's wrong now, but I didn't know it then. And so I operated out of that false belief for decades.
Yeah.
People didn't recognize me. It happened so fast that I would go to a funeral or a wedding where you'd see relatives and friends only once in a while. And I could hear them whispering behind my back, is that Laura? Is that, oh my gosh, what happened? I know people were going to my mother and asking, is she sick? That's, all kinds of angst over the whole thing. And that's when the word shame popped up because everyone was saying, it's such a shame. Such a pretty girl, such a beautiful girl, on and on and on. I mean, of course, so much value placed on what you look like.
Yeah.
And now the downside of that was I was a pretty girl, but now I'm not anymore. And I took it is a shame, and it was, to she is a shame. That you're a shame. You're just a big crying shame.
Yeah.
So shame, shame, shame. I mean, the enemy just moved right in, even in my young life, and no one knew what to do with me because it was 1970. It was a long, long time ago. I'm going to be 65 this year. So we only knew a little bit about eating disorders. We didn't understand anything pretty much beyond anorexia or bulimia. And I didn't have either one, never did. We know now that disordered eating is the number one way women struggle with food, but we didn't know that then.
Yeah.
It also affected me academically. I'd been a straight A student. Teachers told my parents I could do anything I wanted. Your child is that bright. She can do whatever she wants. And I went from straight A's to failing.
Wow.
I could not pull myself together to save my life. And it just went from there for decades and decades and decades of losing and gaining. And, the only solution anyone had in 1970 was to take me to Weight Watchers. That was it. And so again, I don't need to explain to you or anyone else listening to this program, the menacing mindset
of going into the church basement.
Exactly.
To be weighed.
Exactly. Yes. In front of your mother's friends.
Yes.
Been there. And by the way, my mother never had a weight problem. I mean, she had a food problem. I will tell you that, but I didn't know that until later. We equate weight with having a food problem, but that's not true.
Yeah.
So anyway, that's my story in a nutshell.
Wow.
And it really wasn't until probably when I turned 50, 15 years ago, that really the light bulb started going on. And then about 8 years ago, my mother died suddenly.
Mm.
And then my best friend, my best childhood friend we knew each other since we were 6 months old. Her father was my pastor. I mean, we were close like sisters.
Mm.
She passed away 3 months after my mother suddenly.
Wow.
And it was a tipping point for me.
Mm.
I had no way to stuff that.
Yeah.
No ice cream, no cookies, no nothing was gonna numb that out. So I went for help. And so my book is the culmination of 5 years with a angel therapist who specialized, that's the key, in women like me. And she put me through the paces. And in the end, I was free.
Wow.
And so I wrote the book.
I love it. I love it. So I feel like the freedom part of that story got a little glossed over. It was a little bit, someone listening to the show for the first time, I'd be like, oh, she just flipped a switch and boom, she was free. What did that really look like? I know that's not true. What did that really look like? Like the journey was hard. I'm sure it was a hard fight, right?
It was a hard fight. It still is. It still is a hard fight. But here's what I know. God could wave a magic wand and heal us instantly. He has the power to do that, but he puts us through a process because he loves us so much and he wants us to know him. Yeah. And that's how we get to know him. That's how our trust muscle gets strengthened so we can stand up upright. And as women, just as a little aside here, as we age and grow older and our children start to leave home and those transitions start happening, we need our trust muscle strong because there's a series of losses that happen to us as mothers and as women, not just mothers, but as women and as human beings as we get older. And I have found that what I learned on the food journey, if you want to call it that, has strengthened me for other things as well. It's amazing. So yes, there was work to do. There was very specific things that my therapist wanted to work with me on, and almost all of them I rebelled against instantly. Wanting me to reconnect with my body. What? I hate it. I don't want to think about it. I don't want to be friends with it. I don't want to listen to it. I've ignored it for decades. So it took a long time to get me to trust her. To trust the process she was asking me to join her on. And once I did, the floodgates opened and things started rapidly changing. I worked with a dietitian who helped me learn when I was hungry and when I was full because I had no idea. I knew how to eat healthy. No one had to tell me that no. Right. I didn't know how to manage my emotions and process my life and what had happened. And she treated that 100 plus pound gain as a major trauma in my life. And at first I said, trauma? And she said, Laura, you describe it as a bomb going off. It was a major trauma for you as a little girl. I never looked at it that way because I was very busy blaming myself. So it was a 5-year process and it's still ongoing. I still have to use the tools that I was taught. And some days I don't do so well. But most of the time I do.
I love that. And agreed, right? I mean, I use the term freedom all the time, and I think you probably use that word too. Yes. But freedom doesn't mean you never have a day where you don't struggle. Freedom means, like you said, having the tools, and also I think just having the awareness that, oh, wait, this is a choice. I get to decide if I'm going to, lament in my body woe today, or if I'm going to use the tools I have to, try to pull myself up a little bit out of that. But
yes. I mean, one major change I've noticed is when I go on speaking engagements or anywhere really, I used to have a pile of clothes on the bed.
Yeah.
Because I was upset about everything.
Yeah.
Well, now I'm like, just pick the thing out of the closet that looks nice, that you love. I mean, that you love, but that fits.
Yeah.
And just go with it and be joyful, Yeah. So, I mean, that's freedom alone.
Absolutely. I mean, that wasn't just speaking engagements for me. That was every day. I mean, my college roommates would tell you that was hard to find my bed because there were so many clothes piled up. And that was way back in college. And then, oh my goodness, becoming a pastor's wife for me every Sunday
Oh
morning
my,
was the
every
stack.
Sunday.
So yeah, I think a lot of people can relate to that for sure. Well, so what 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 are some of your biggest takeaways and like as you look back on your journey? And so you said 50 was kind of the turning point or the beginning of the turning point. So let's talk like 20 to 50. Like what are some of your takeaways from that season?
Well, I would say the 20s were rough. Although I married my husband in my 20s.
Okay.
And God will bless you abundantly even when you're a mess.
Yeah.
I mean, what a faithful, loving, unconditional husband I have. That is not my story. Is not that my husband ever has given me a hard time one way or the other. He just loves me and supports me. But so great things happened in my 20s. I had my first child in my 20s. I loved being pregnant because I didn't have to worry about my weight. I thought it was awesome. I loved being pregnant all 3 times. But I was in a place where I believed that my husband could fix me when I got married, that, oh, now it's all going to be fine. I've got this wonderful man and he loves me and all's going to be well. And that's fantasy thinking. So I lived with that, thinking my husband could fix me. Not fair. He could not possibly. Poor man. I mean, what did I put him through anyway? Does this look good? I don't want to go out today. I don't want to go there. I don't want to see those people. He lived with that. So, that was the 20s and 30s. But that was also the time when I first was introduced to women's Bible study. And that's when the healing really, like the very beginning of healing began. When I started to process God's word with other women and applying it to my life for growth and change.
Yeah, I love that.
And then, do we say up to the 50s? We say 20 to 50?
Yeah.
Okay. So then the 40s were rapid growth. Not about food and weight, but of course, it doesn't have anything to do with food and weight. We know that. So there was a lot of shoring up that God was doing, teaching me, and things bubbled up. I had a epic failure in college because of all of this. I mean, I challenge anyone to have a worse transcript than I did. And in my late 40s, because I'd had some healing, I'd gone for help, more generic help than specific help. But I went back to school at 50 and started with English 101 and graduated. I'm bumping into the 50s, but all those years led up to me going back to school. And that was a major freedom thing for me.
Awesome. But meanwhile, you're still on the diet, off the diet, on the diet, off the diet.
Yep. Angst, misery, wouldn't get in the pool with my kids. I had to count the cost. That was part of my healing journey. And there was a lot of things that it cost me and my family. I mean, I see evidence. I have 3 sons, but I see some evidence of this in all 3 of my children. I do.
Yeah.
I was just thinking the other day, I would sit on the edge of the pool with my bathing suit cover up on, get my feet in the water, desperately wanting to get in there with my children, desperately wanting to cool off because I was hot, desperately wanting to be in the pool with the other women who were playing with their children. I didn't do it. I did not do it. Same thing at the beach. I'd get down with my chair by the edge of the water, but I would not go in. So yes, it was tough.
So what would you say to yourself back then? And really, Laura, you're speaking to a lot of the women listening who are saying, yes, I just went through the summer exactly like that. How would you encourage them?
I would encourage them to get help. That's the first thing, because we can't do this by ourselves. It's really hard to be self-aware enough. If we could, we would have done it by now.
Good point.
I'm very self-reflective, and I'm more than willing to blame myself. But I needed another set of expert eyes on me to draw out what was going on, and also to help me practice self-compassion, which I was not familiar with. So I would say get help. The other thing would be to surround yourself with other women who are like-minded and who are struggling with the same thing. The Bible studies that I was involved in weren't around this subject, but they were freedom Bible studies for sure. Believing God by Beth Moore changed my life. And so I would say, do whatever you can to surround yourself with people who are going to lift you up. If you have a friend who's starving herself and drinking seltzer water all day long, she can still be your friend, but you need to be around women who are struggling with what you're struggling with.
Preach. It's almost as if you're doing an advertisement for my next group coaching session, which starts very soon.
Yay!
No, I couldn't agree with you more. I think the eating disorder world, a lot of us in it, like your story, smart, and I can do what I set my mind on doing. Yes. And so I think when it comes to our perspective on freedom, it's like, well, other people probably need help. But I know that I am strong enough. And if I just determine myself, just like all those Mondays I started Weight Watchers, right? Like it's just a matter of willpower. I just need to keep my knuckles white because I'm gripping so hard. And somehow I know I can do this.
That's exactly right. And you know what? The profile of a girl who turns to food is a bright, intuitive child who sees the world through eyes that are honest. I always think of the Emperor Has No Clothes little boy. I was the little boy who went that the king's naked, the emperor's naked, but everybody else said he wasn't.
Right.
And so what we do is we withdraw because people don't get us.
Right.
And we're standing there saying, I see the incongruency in what's going on here in this household or wherever I am at work. I mean, it's a struggle that we have all through our lives,
right?
But it's also a wonderful strength. It's a beautiful gift from God that the enemy can distort. So yes, to all of that. I thought the same thing. Well, I'm not anorexic and I'm not bulimic and I'm not, eating a bag of cookies every time I sit down. So I'm okay. I was not okay.
Right. Yeah.
Not at all.
Yeah.
Not at all. I was a grazer more than I was eating large quantities of food. My mother used to say, you never walk by the refrigerator without opening it up and you're always grazing. So I had a hard time identifying myself as a person who had a problem with food because I didn't binge and purge or starve.
Yeah. 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 So on the, I want to say on the other side, and I was like, was that going to sound contradictory? But you're on the other side. Yeah. I mean, I do believe that there's a line in the sand sometimes. And it's like, okay, I am on the side of freedom. Where are you now with food? Like, what does that look like? Has that part changed in addition to the body image part? Like, what does that look like for you?
So the first thing I want to say is that was absolutely astonishing to me was I believe freedom was, excuse me, I believe freedom was 120 pounds. That's what I believed it was. And so my whole goal was to get there somehow and stay there. I could get there with extreme measures, but I could not stay there. So that was my goal when I went into therapy was this lady's going to show me how to get there and stay there. Well, then COVID hit. And when COVID hit, I live in Maryland. We occasionally have blizzards. It reminded me of a blizzard. We all got sent home and we couldn't go out to work and we're all hunkered down. So what did I do during blizzards all these years? Well, I cooked like a crazy woman. I cooked and cooked casseroles, meatloaves, everything we normally wouldn't eat. I was cooking. But all of a sudden I noticed a couple weeks in that I wasn't doing that. It never crossed my mind. We were just eating normally. I had 2 children out of state I didn't see for a year. I was anxious, but I had tools now. So that's when I ran into the therapist, or actually it was on Zoom, I guess, because we were COVID. But I said to her, I'm afraid to believe this, but I think I'm free. And she goes, you are.
Wow.
And we both cried our eyes out. I said, but I've only lost a little bit of weight and I don't, and she's like, no, it has nothing to do with the number on the scale, Laura. So that was so liberating. I can't even tell you. I've met women who, by the world standards, you would say, oh my goodness, poor thing, who are so free. They're on the path.
Yeah.
You can't tell by looking at someone.
Yeah.
where they are and where they started and where they're going. So that was revolutionary. And so that greatly impacted how I viewed food and how I eat and all that. So basically, I eat 3 square meals every day. And that includes something from every food group, although I don't count it, measure it, look at it, or think of it. I just do it. You know, a sandwich and a piece of fruit, something like that. But that's what I do. Sandwiches were off limits before because they had so many calories. And then the nutritionist or dietitian pointed out to me they have less calories than some of the salads I was making. So hello. And then I tended to undereat as well. You know, I'd eat a can of soup or something and then, you know, snack all afternoon. So, so 3 square meals and snacks if needed. But if I don't think of it and I don't want it, I don't have it.
Yeah, it's so funny. I love that you mentioned that about sandwiches because in my journey to be an intuitive eater is the label I'll give it.
Yes.
But sandwiches for sure, like that was never an acceptable thing like that. You know, for me, it's probably more like oh, well, you can't eat the bread, you can't have the carbohydrates, you know, so you just like roll the cheese and the turkey and throw some mustard in there or whatever. But it's so funny to me now. Well, first of all, I'm going to do a podcast episode sometime called "The Devil Stole My Breakfast" because it's like, you know, I didn't eat breakfast for so many years, right? Before intermittent fasting was a thing, I was skipping breakfast, right? To just skip those calories. Like I didn't think I didn't really need it. Like I felt okay in the morning, you know, that kind of thing. And now that I'm eating kind of like you said, I'm eating a balanced breakfast every morning. I'm eating, you know, a real lunch every day. It is so strange how the power of food, which is really probably the power of just being overly hungry or never satisfied or all of those things, right? Like it's totally lost just in eating like and I'm going to say normal person, right? Like I think at some point we were all lied to as women, or maybe even men too, that you have to eat this special, restrictive, crazy way. And it messed us all up. And now eating a sandwich is a very satisfying thing. Spot on.
It's great. Get some whole grain bread and some good turkey and you're good to go. I know it felt really weird. It felt like I was cheating and, you know, and then there's shame involved and, you know, all those negative things. But when you're satiated, you're not thinking about food anymore. You can think about the things of God. You can think about the things you're supposed to be thinking about, like what your child needs or what your husband needs or what you need. You're not preoccupied all the time. I used to love those hunger pains because to me that meant you're losing weight. So that's where I wanted to be, right? Success. I'm having a good day. Now I can't tolerate it.
Yeah. No, agreed. I remember somewhere along the line I heard, you know, you should always go to bed hungry.
Yes.
And I remember, you know, maybe in my 20s and 30s laying in bed, you know, with those hunger pains, like that feeling like I'd really accomplished something that day because I was going to bed hungry. And now it's like, I am not going to be able to sleep if I don't like go eat a banana or something.
Exactly. Oh, but only eat a half.
Oh, yes, of course, because bananas are dangerous. Not as dangerous as, you know, like, well, no, they're so much more dangerous than a protein bar or something, you know, manufactured. Anyway, they could do a whole episode on that, Laura.
You could do bananas.
This has been so good. Laura, we're out of time for today, but will you come back and share with us more of your journey in the next episode?
I would love to.
Well, thank you for watching or listening today. If you want to connect with Laura, you can check out her book, Still Becoming, or what's your website, Laura?
www.laura-acuna.com.
Laura-acuna.com, and I'll have the links to all that in show notes. Thank you for watching or listening today, and I hope something today has helped you stop comparing and start living. Bye-bye.